Hello and welcome to our presentation by Adam, Vincent, Lorenzo, Shivam, and Andrew. So here's a question we're exploring today. Can your health insurance keep you trapped in a job you'd otherwise leave? We're going to walk through the evidence that says yes and show you that the system creating this problem was never designed on purpose, and our biggest attempt to fix it didn't work.
When economists talk about job lock, they mean a worker stays in a job not because it's the best fit, highest paying, or most fulfilling, but because leaving would mean risking their health insurance. This slide gives us a powerful real world example of that idea. Imagine your child suddenly needs an emergency appendectomy. No warning, no time to plan. It's stressful, scary, and extremely expensive. But because you have employer sponsored insurance, most of the bill is covered and your child gets the care they need. Now, after going through that experience, think about how you would feel about changing jobs. A 2023 study by economist Shi looked at families exactly in this situation, families whose child had an emergency appendectomy. The study found that the primary insurance holder in the household was 13% less likely to switch jobs the following year. That is a striking result because an appendectomy has nothing to do with job satisfaction, wages, or promotions. The surgery itself doesn't change whether someone likes their boss or wants a better opportunity. What it does change is the perception of risk when it comes to insurance. After seeing how valuable their current coverage was during a crisis, workers become more cautious. They may worry that a new employer has weaker benefits, different doctors, or higher deductibles, or even uncertainty during that transition. So even if a better job does exist, they end up staying put. That's job lock in action. Health insurance tied to employment, reducing labor mobility. And when workers move less freely, it can lower competition in the labor market, reduce entrepreneurship, and keep people stuck in jobs that aren't the best match. So in this case, it wasn't the employer that kept the worker, it was the appendix.
So, how did we end up in a system where your health insurance is tied to your employer in the first place? The answer is by accident. In 1942, the US government imposed wage controls during World War II. Employers couldn't compete for workers by offering higher pay, so they started offering fringe benefits instead, and health insurance was the big one. Then in 1954, the IRS formalized a tax exclusion. Employer-paid health premiums wouldn't count as taxable income. That made employer-sponsored insurance significantly cheaper than buying coverage on your own, and it cemented the system. Today, that tax exclusion costs the federal government $263 billion a year. It is one of the largest tax subsidies in the U.S. tax code. Around five-sixths or 83% of that benefit flows to the top half of earners. If you're a lower wage worker, the person most likely to actually be trapped by job lock, you're getting the least help from this subsidy. The system was never designed to help workers, it just happened, and now we're all stuck with it.
On the right, you can see a standard labor market supply and demand diagram that we have created. In a competitive labor market without employer-sponsored insurance, workers move freely between jobs. Supply and demand intersect at the efficient equilibrium, hence the right workers are matched with the right jobs, and total surplus is indeed maximized. Now, if you introduce employer-sponsored insurance, workers who have coverage, especially some with families, pre-existing conditions, or some who have recently had a major medical event, they become reluctant to leave. The cost of switching isn't just the job search anymore, it's actually the risk of losing coverage entirely. Because think about it, when you get a new job, there's always a delay between leaving your old one and starting your new one, and most people can't afford to not have coverage for any amount of time. What this does in the diagram is shift the labor supply curve to the left, as you can see pictured below. Fewer workers are willing to move at any given wage. The new equilibrium has a lower quantity of labor transitions and a different wage. That triangle between the two supply curves and the demand curve becomes the deadweight loss. This is what it looks like for millions of Americans who stay in jobs where they are less productive, less satisfied, and less well matched. All because the alternative means putting their family's health coverage at risk. And as we've covered, they can ill afford to do so.
So now the question becomes, if job lock is such a big issue, how have we actually tried to fix it? One major policy attempt was the Affordable Care Act in 2010, specifically the dependent coverage mandate. This allowed people up to the age of 26 to stay on their parents' or guardian insurance instead of relying on employer-sponsored coverage. The idea basically was if young adult workers weren't tied to their job for health insurance, they would feel more comfortable switching jobs. So, this was tested using a natural experiment. They compared two groups, 19 to 25-year-olds who were affected by the policy and slightly older individuals who weren't. Then they looked at the job switching before and after 2010. If you look on the left side, this shows the job switching rates before September 2010. The red line is the treatment group, the 19 to 25-year-olds, and the white line is the control group. Now, moving off to the right side, after 2010, if the policy worked, we would expect to see a noticeable increase in the red line. But instead, you actually see almost no change. In fact, the treatment group slightly decreased and the control group stayed basically flat. As you can see, no movement. So the key takeaway here is that even though people had more access to insurance outside of their job, it didn't meaningfully increase the mobility. And that suggests the problem runs deeper than just one policy fix. So now that we're able to see the bigger picture and the cause of the failed attempt to fix it, we need to take a step back and realize first, the job lock is very real. For example, families dealing with something like a child's emergency surgery and significantly less likely to switch jobs because they can't risk losing coverage. Second, the system wasn't even intentionally designed. It came out after World War II wage controls and later tax policy, not from a plan to optimize labor markets. Third, the benefits are actually distributed pretty unequally. Around 80% of the tax subsidy goes to higher income households, which means the people who need it to support the often benefit from it the least. And fourth, even major policy efforts like the ACA didn't meaningfully improve job mobility. So when you pull that all together, it's pretty clear the core issue is that health insurance is tied to employment. And because of that, one of the most effective long-term solutions would be to decouple insurance from employment entirely. That would allow workers to make job decisions on productivity, fit, and wages instead of fear of just losing healthcare.
Before we wrap up, I want to quickly talk about our sources. The appendicitis study comes from a 2013 paper by Shai in the Journal of Health Economics, which used a natural experiment to measure that 13% reduction in job mobility. The historical context and tax subsidy analysis draws from Gruber's 2010 NBER working paper, which is where the 263 billion figure and the income distribution breakdown come from. And our ACA evaluation is based on Bailey and Chorney's 2016 paper in Contemporary Economic Policy, which used a difference in difference design to test whether the dependent coverage mandate would actually move the needle on job lock. All three links are on the slide if you want to dig deeper, and thank you guys for listening.